Frozen with fear, Emily slowly turned around. In the faint moonlight streaming through the attic window, Emily had always loved the old house she inherited from her grandmother. It was filled with character, with its creaky wooden floors and antique furniture. However, after moving in, she began to notice odd noises coming from the attic, especially at night. She assumed it was just the house settling, or perhaps a raccoon that had found its way in. One night, as she was lying in bed reading, she heard distinct footsteps above her. They were slow and deliberate, pacing back and forth. Her heart raced. Summoning her courage, she grabbed a flashlight and the heaviest object she could find, a candlestick. She climbed the narrow stairs to the attic, her pulse pounding in her ears. When she reached the top, the footsteps stopped. She pushed open the creaky attic door and shined the flashlight around. The beam of light revealed old trunks, dusty furniture, and cobwebs, but no signs of life. She turned to leave, feeling a bit foolish, when the flashlight flickered and died. In the darkness, she heard a raspy breath right behind her. Frozen with fear, Emily slowly turned around. In the faint moonlight streaming through the attic window, she saw the outline of a tall, thin man. His eyes glinted with a predatory look. Before she could scream, he lunged at her. She swung the candlestick, striking him in the head. He crumpled to the floor, unconscious. Emily ran downstairs, locked herself in her bedroom, and called the police. When they arrived, they found the man still unconscious in the attic. He had been living there for weeks, surviving on food he stole while she slept. The police discovered a small, hidden door in the attic that led to a forgotten crawl space where he had been hiding. Mark was a college student living off campus in a small, one-bedroom apartment. It was a quiet building, and he liked the solitude it offered for his studies. One evening, while he was studying for finals, his phone rang. The caller ID showed a blocked number. When he answered, there was nothing but silence on the other end. He hung up, thinking it was a prank call. Over the next few days, the calls continued, always from a blocked number, always silent. Mark became increasingly unnerved. He mentioned it to his neighbor, Mrs. Daniels, an elderly woman who had lived in the building for years. She told him that a previous tenant, a young woman, had been harassed by silent phone calls before she mysteriously disappeared. That night, Mark's phone rang again. This time, he decided to keep the line open. He heard faint breathing, and then a whisper, "I see you." Mark's blood ran cold. He slammed the phone down and called the police, but there was little they could do without a number to trace. Determined to catch the caller, Mark set up a recording device and waited. The calls continued, each one more disturbing than the last. On the third night, the whisper said, "I'm coming for you." Terrified, Mark packed a bag and prepared to leave. As he reached for the doorknob, his phone rang again. He answered it, and the whisper said, "Don't go." Mark bolted out of the apartment and stayed with a friend. The police investigated and found that the calls were coming from inside the building. They traced them to a vacant apartment one floor above Mark's. Inside, they discovered a makeshift living area and a cell phone. The previous tenant, who had disappeared, was never found, but it was clear that someone had been watching Mark and using the phone to terrorize him. Mark moved out immediately, and the building was eventually condemned.